palm of your hand.
What is up, everybody? We are back yet again. This is from Screen to Shelf. My name is Will. I am joined by these two wonderful gentlemen, Gabe and Chase, for part two of our cult film discussion. We're going to be talking about more cult movies. We did a first round of this on last week's podcast, and we said, you know what, let's just keep going. Because there's so many cult movies out there. There's so many underappreciated films. Not that they're not appreciated now, but at the time. And we got a lot more to cover, so who knows? Maybe we'll even do a part 3 of this down the line. What do you guys think?
Next week.
Probably.
We'll just rest of the year.
Cult films for the rest of 2024, because we're just giving up on everything else.
Maybe Chase and I will finally get through our stack of movies we need to watch.
Yeah.
Will was like super disappointed in us before we started the podcast, but
yeah, I had like 4 different ones. Nope.
Yeah,
we haven't seen it.
Yeah, there were like 4 different titles, and these. Oh, I haven't seen it. Oh, yeah, I actually haven't seen that one either. Oh, cool.
We're on a roll, man.
This is great. I know.
It'll make for a good
you know
versus.
what though? That'll be fuel for your that'll be fuel for your versus videos. Now it'll be you two versus me. And you'll both have.
We
to
can
give
do
your
that.
Opinions.
I am down for that, 100%.
But yeah, we're going to keep talking about cult movies. We each have, I think, 3 movies this go around, and then I'm assuming we'll each. Chase, I know you do. Gabe, I'm not sure about you. I'll throw some out there too, some honorable mentions towards the end of the discussion here. But let's open it up, Chase. I want to have you start, so go ahead with your first pick, and we'll get right into it without any further ado.
Yeah, this one is actually probably up there in my top 3 animated movies of all time. And if you haven't seen this movie, whenever you turn it on, this is actually one of the most sampled soundtracks in hip hop of all time. And this is going to be La Planète Sauvage, or Fantastic Planet by René Laloux. It is a French animated film. It is about giant blue people, aliens, and essentially just think of like ants were as big as people and people were the size of ants. That's kind of how the world is, right? But the soundtrack is literally top 3 soundtracks of all time. I'm almost positive a really, really big name hip hop artist throughout time. Every few years, this soundtrack's being sampled. Whenever I first listened to it, I was like, dang, that sounds so familiar. Then went down a rabbit hole, and I kid you not, there's probably 10 or 15 different like platinum hits that have been sampled by this soundtrack. It is great. It is very, very good. There is no box office returns on this movie. I can't even find a budget on it. It is a very short movie. It runs an hour and 11 minutes. It came out in December of 1973. And the animation style is very, very similar to Heavy Metal, where it looks a lot more hand-drawn, a lot more rough and stuff like that. Not like South Park type of cardboard cutouts, but it almost looks cardboard-ish a little bit and pastel-ish at the same time. It's a very beautiful film. It's very well made. It has a great story. It's about oppression and the revolution and stuff like that, rising up against like tyranny. And it's pretty tight for its runtime. It's very emotional. It's very sentimental. I think it genuinely strikes every single chord. I'm surprised by the amount of people that haven't seen this. I'm eagerly anticipating this did get a Blu-ray release from Criterion. I want to say about 10, 12 years ago. And it needs to come out in 4K. This is a movie that needs to be put out in 4K. The HDR would just absolutely elevate it. An Atmos track with that soundtrack on there would just absolutely elevate it to an unreal degree, or even like a really, really properly restored 5.1 would just sound insane on this movie. I don't believe this individual has done much else. Time Masters and Gandahar. Gandahar, actually, I have seen. High recommendation of that one. That one did really, really well in the box office, or it did not do really well at the box office. $5.5 million budget, and it only made $370,000. So definitely didn't do well. But Gandahar, shout out Gandahar as well. I didn't know that was by Renee, but it's fantastic. Can't say enough good things about it. Well, I'm pretty sure you've seen it, right, Gabe? I know you haven't seen it.
I have not seen it. 100% I've not seen it.
Yeah, Gabe, you should check it out. I think Rolling Stone, didn't they rank it like one of the best animated film, or somebody ranked it one of the like top 50 animated films of all time, I think.
And it's deserved.
But I think I had like I don't know if it was a DVD or the Blu-ray, but I had it. I had the Criterion edition of this.
Yeah.
I don't have it down here. I'd have to check upstairs and see if it's up with the rest of them. But I don't think I have it any longer. But I was actually doing some reading while you were talking, Chase, and this is kind of interesting because I don't know if you guys have ever played the game Pikmin back in the day.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
apparently
It's
this
inspired
was
by it.
heavily inspired the designing of the world of those games, which is kind of cool because I remember playing those. I mean, this is years
Yeah.
ago, but
That's GameCube
days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God, now we're dating ourselves. Damn, man, that takes me back. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting too because it is such a shorter runtime. Like, what did you say? An hour and 12 minutes, Chase?
71 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
it's very
pretty
tight.
cool.
And
Yeah.
it got 36 on that Rolling Stone. I was looking that up while you were talking. And it ranked 36 on
Oh,
Rolling
okay.
Stone's thing. So that's great. That's really good. That's
Yeah.
very solid.
I didn't find anything about the box office other than the fact that I guess in France it got like 800,000 admissions. So we can take that for what it was. But yeah, it's funny. There's not a lot of information regarding how it did financially. But this was a co-production, I guess, between I guess it's a Czech film and a France production,
Yeah.
French production. So that's interesting.
Yeah, really good. That's a movie that just for the soundtrack alone, like it's just so good. Like the strings in there that come on during the eerier moments and stuff like that. It's just good. Like I turn on the soundtrack religiously at this point. It's just so good. Very well done. That's a movie that I'm clamoring for a 4K. Now that we've got Conan and Toxic Avenger, that's literally my most wanted 4K out there other than Ninja Turtles at this point. But yeah, Fantastic
Cool.
Planet. Really, really good.
I'm wondering if I'm sure there's a vinyl soundtrack of that you can pick up somewhere.
Let's hope.
Probably worth a little bit of money. Yeah, I see it here.
Oh,
That's
really?
cool.
Oh, that
Yeah, they
that
got a
looks
vinyl
clean.
edition.
Yeah, that looks
which is
really
cool.
good.
Cool cover art too. I love the I love the designs of the characters.
Yeah, they're great. They look like a very simplified version of Abe Sapien from Hellboy with red eyes.
Okay. That is actually a really good way to describe it. That's right up there, dude. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. But yeah, that
Cool.
vinyl looks good. But yeah, who's got their first pick up next? I'm excited to hear it.
Gabe, why don't you go next and throw what you got out there?
Yeah, man, I had a few
Follow
up
up.
here. I mean, I'm gonna start with this one just because this is one I'm actually divisive about, but I wanted to bring it up just because I know it's a very popular cult movie. I actually just saw it a few years ago, and maybe I just need to watch it again. But my selection is Fight Club. So Fight Club, I think when it came out, just had it had a pretty polarizing reception when I was reading about it when I first saw it. I think it was like really polarized, and I think it actually underperformed at the box office as well. It just started developing kind of a fan base and a following as the years went on. I think when it came out on DVD and Blu-ray, over time people just started kind of analyzing the film in terms of it being kind of this like weird, anti-fascists, movie, and it's a really quirky. I think Chase would actually love it. Chase had mentioned he had never seen it. I think you would actually love Fight Club, Chase. It's just you could definitely tell it's a movie of its time. Do you guys know what year that Fight Club came out?
Wasn't it 2000 like early?
90 I want to say I don't know why I'm thinking 97.
See, 99, here it is. Yeah, 99 is when it
Okay,
came
even
out. So
younger.
this is like like turn of the century, kind of like you can definitely feel like it's really kind of a movie of its time where it's kind of like focused on this generation and also like transitioning to the new generation. It's a really quirky film, and I don't want to spoil it for Chase. It's hard talking about it without spoiling it for Chase, but the end, I think that's kind of like where it got me, where you kind of find there's a little twist at the end when everything kind of wraps up, and it makes you think for sure. I think that it really does a number on you, and you really have to. It forces you to kind of reflect on the movie and tell you like, hey, you need to watch this again and kind of see the little clues here and there, the subtle clues that this is how it actually played out. And Brad Pitt does an amazing job in the movie. It's just I don't know, man. It just didn't hit with me. I don't know why. I like the film's message. I like the kind of anti-fascist approach it takes. And I think I remember reading an article from David Fincher, him talking about how this is kind of a movie about how we as a society have evolved from like, primal hunters, right? And primitive colonies to a society where we're just shopping and we're focused on materialistic crap and consumerism and all of that. And that's where we are now, and how we're not really kind of engineered to adapt into a society that way, which is a really interesting analysis of the movie. It's just a really quirky movie. And that's why I know Chase would actually freaking love it his first time watching it. But it's definitely one I think I need to watch again. I own it on Blu-ray, and I think it deserves a second viewing for sure. But I just was super divided on it. I don't know how. Will, do you like Fight Club? Is that a movie that you enjoy watching?
I was going to say, I own the Blu-ray as well, and I'm probably going to try to check it out again soon. I mean, I have a feeling we're going to get a 4K of that sometime soon. If not this year, then next year. I mean, it's bound to happen, especially with with 7 being released this year. But yeah, as far as my thoughts on it, I mean, I liked it originally. Again, it was one of those things where I remember at the time, people who had seen it were like, "Oh, the ending's gonna drive you insane." Like, there's a lot of questions I had coming out of it. But yeah, I think it's a visually, it's a very interesting movie. I guess I kind of find that it's not one of those movies that I go to again and again. Like I said, I have the Blu-ray. I haven't seen it in years. It's been a while. So I definitely want to revisit it because I think it's worth a rewatch just to see how I feel about it now. That it's been probably 4 or 5 years since I've seen it.
Same.
But yeah, Chase, it's hard to really talk about it without giving. I don't want to give too much away because it really. I mean, the ending. What happens in the film, it really plays into that ending, and it is like it's very out there in terms of the twist. It's I think one of the most unexpected endings I think I've ever seen in a movie. So I'll give it that. But I mean, I remember liking it overall. It's got a lot of quotable and I guess we could say memorable moments, but yeah, it's a film I haven't seen in many years, so I'm interested to see what I would think about it if I were to watch it again. So I'll probably throw that on the watch list at some point soon, throw the Blu-ray in and see what I think.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like you said, Will, I haven't seen it for 4 or 5 years either, so I don't know if either the times that we're living in or also just me having watched a whole bunch of different movies since then, maybe my taste in movies has changed a little bit. Maybe I might look at it a little bit different. You know what I mean? Because I do think it's a film of its time. I definitely see it kind of like if a turn of the century movie. You know what I mean? Right. It's definitely kind of that. And I'm curious to see, if I watch it now, how I would feel about it. But yeah, it does definitely build up towards that kind of ending scene, and it's definitely like a culmination of the whole movie. So it's hard to talk about it without talking about the ending. But put that on the top of your stack, Chase. Wherever it's at, just put it at the very top. it's like sealed. I haven't even opened it.
I think it dropped on Amazon to like $4, dude, and that's when I bought it.
Oh yeah, I mean I've seen it for like $5, $4 on Amazon. It's pretty cheap, and I mean I think we should maybe be near like the 25th anniversary, like for a 4K soon. So
yeah, that would be
I'll purchase it again. It's not a movie that I don't think I'd be like, I'm never going to buy it again, or, I'll just stay with the Blu-ray. I'll definitely purchase the 4K and rewatch it again. But it's definitely one of those movies. It just didn't stick with me the first time. And maybe it's just one of those movies you need to rewatch, kind of like the first episode we were talking about Clockwork Orange, how for sure that movie didn't stick with me or resonate with me the first viewing. And it was after repeat viewings that I just fell in love with it. So maybe that's Fight Club for me. But yeah, that one's kind of, I wanted to bring that one up just because it's a little bit divisive. It's not like I love it, but I just had kind of mixed feelings about it.
I'll say another thing too. It's one of those movies too. It is based on a novel. I think the novel came out sometime in the mid 90s. I don't know why. That's why I thought maybe the film was released earlier than it was. I said 1997, but I think I'm thinking of the novel because I'm going back. I'm trying to remember. I think the novel was probably 96 or 97. I think I'm getting that release date confused with the
96 for the novel, it says. So okay. 96 for the novel, 99 for the movie. So it was pretty much back to back.
Yeah, and I don't know how much they changed from the novel, but it was. I was just gonna say it's one of those movies where I always wanted to read the novel just to see how much they actually deviated, from it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
and
think that
it's
warrants a rewatch, dude, for sure.
yeah, and the performances are great. I mean, like Brad Pitt does an amazing job. Helena Bonham Carter's good in it. I'm going through the
Yeah.
cast here. Obviously, freaking Edward Norton does an amazing job. Like, I mean, the cast is solid and the screenplay is solid too. It's just kind of it elicits kind of like mixed emotions, at least when I saw it. But I could see how people are like, this is totally, one of the greatest movies of that decade. Um,
Hmm.
but I need to rewatch it again. But that's my
Ed
pick. It's
Norton
Fight
was
Club.
he was on a run, man. Like Fight Club, he did
Oh
American
yeah.
History X, like around that same time period. I think before Fight Club, he did. Well, Fight Club was '99. Do you guys remember
Mhm.
that movie Primal Fear? I don't want to get too much off topic, but I
I
think
think
he,
so.
Sounds
Was that
familiar.
before
it was
Fight Club?
before. I'm pretty sure that was like 1994. No, not 1994. Probably like mid 90s, like
96.
95 or 96.
Yeah, it was 96.
Uh,
With
movie called
Richard
Primal
Gere.
Fear. He was great in that. But yeah, I mean, Ed Norton was on a run, like in the mid to late 90s. That was like when his career pretty much took off. So
Yeah.
pretty solid performance from him in Fight Club. And I mean, Brad Pitt, that's probably one of his most notable performances of the
Mhm.
90s is Tyler Durden. So
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's my pick. And like I said, I chose it just because it is kind of a mixed reaction pick. I'd be curious in people commenting down below to see if they love Fight Club as much as other people, or if they're kind of like me, where it was kind of like, it was all right. But comment down below, guys, and let us know. Will, what's your pick for your cult movie, the first one?
So we were talking before we started rolling here. I wanted to mention this on the last episode, and it was actually one that I had thought of, but I didn't end up putting it on my list. But I'll throw it out now, and it's another John Carpenter film. It's Big Trouble in Little China, which is one of my favorite movies. And I mean, this movie, Chase, I'd say this movie, if I could compare it with any other film in terms of the following that it has, I say it's right up there with films like Halloween 3 in terms of the love that people have for it. And I got to say, I mean, I want to do an episode on John Carpenter somewhere down the line with you guys because looking into the releases of some of his movies, I swear he has like the worst luck when it comes to box office releases. At least like after Halloween, going into the 80s, Escape from New York was somewhat successful, but we talked about The Thing and what happened with that, with the release coinciding with like major movies. And Big Trouble in Little China, it's one of those movies that I think suffers from the same thing. In 1986, that's the same year that Aliens was released. When this movie was being promoted, people were still pretty much caught up in the hype of Aliens. I think Aliens was released like 2 or 3 weeks after Big Trouble in Little China, and essentially this movie just failed due to that. I think it was a $20 or $25 million budget. The film only made about 11 million, so it was considered a bomb at the box office. But I think another thing that this film has going for it that was just misunderstood at the time was kind of the role reversal between the leads in the movie. So you have Kurt Russell as Jack Burton, and then you have Dennis Dunn, who's a fantastic martial artist and great actor, playing Wang, who is kind of Jack Burton's sidekick. Except it's interesting because Carpenter takes the kind of like the buddy cop dynamic, but he flips it on its head, right? So, Jack Burton is kind of advertised and promoted as the so-called leading man, but what's funny is he has like this kind of like John Wayne-esque kind of attitude, but it's more of like a satire as far as his performance is concerned on like the John Wayne archetype, I guess we can say. And what's interesting is Jack Burton, he takes a back seat to Dennis Dunn's character. As everything unfolds, we find out, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this movie because again, I think there's a lot going on here, and in terms of the structure, like Carpenter plays around with that a lot, but that's one of the main things that he kind of flips on its side is that role reversal between who we think is the actual leading man and the hero, and who ends up taking that role over, which is Dennis Dunn's character. It's kind of funny. Like Dennis Dunn is really the guy that's there to kick ass, and Jack Burton's almost like on the side, like providing his satirical commentary on the whole situation. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I think it's one that was just misunderstood at the time, and we got to think about it in the time frame of, or I guess we can say in the context of what people were expecting in the 80s. You know, Carl Weathers just passed away, rest in peace, but I'm thinking back to that time period when you have action movies like Rambo, when you have Arnold, you know, Conan and Terminator and all these other films that are coming out at the time, you know, the action films of the 80s. I just think from a movie like this, from an action adventure film, people were expecting something that they didn't get. And I think that led to the underperformance of the film, in addition to obviously being released, you know, 2.5 weeks before Aliens, which is one of the biggest sequels of all time, one of the biggest movies of the decade. So Big Trouble in Little China, that's my pick. I just think it's a totally misunderstood movie, but it's one that has gained such a cult following today. I mean, I got the poster right on the wall, so you guys know I'm a huge fan of this movie. And yeah, I mean, just kudos to John Carpenter. Incredible soundtrack, incredible set design. I mean, there's so many things about this movie that somebody can appreciate, even if you're not necessarily a fan of the film. Technically, I guess I could say, there's so much going on and there's so much to appreciate. He really kind of takes like the Western genre, and it's also like an action adventure film, but it's a martial arts movie as well. There's so many things going on. There's science fiction elements in there. Chase, there's even some elements of, it's interesting because he kind of takes like the sword and sandal approach, but it's more so in line with like Chinese mythology and mysticism, which is kind of cool. So you have that whole thing going on. There's so much going on in this movie that it's hard not to appreciate just how grand the scope was in terms of Carpenter's vision for it. So I have to throw Big Trouble in there, and that's my first pick. I definitely want to do a retrospective down the line. I think that would be a cool thing to do, especially with Carpenter's movies, because like I said, I just feel like he has just bad luck. With some of his films, especially during the 80s, with this one and The Thing, both underperforming. But it's interesting because they obviously both found new life on home video after the fact. So that's my first pick.
I'm down. It's I think I said this before we rolled. That's one of the two. I haven't seen Assault on Precinct 13. I've even seen that one with Amber Heard before. That one was The Ward, man. That movie was not good. Yeah, man. Yes. I don't know how I managed to see that before I've seen Big Little China. But yeah, it's definitely.
I've seen The Ward from start to finish.
Dude, actually, I thought it was pretty decent on an off-topic note. It's just it was goofy as hell the last 10 minutes, and not in a good way, man. It was just not good, man.
Yeah.
He could have did better. I think it would have been better had he made it in the 80s. That's kind of what it came out as. You know what I mean? Like, it's a movie that was meant for 30 years ago, but came out 30 years past the time that movie would have done well.
Right.
But
on Tubi, I'll watch it. I rented it actually when that came out, The Ward.
That's how I watched it, was Tubi.
Oh, to Tubi. I actually saw it when it came out. Like, I don't know if it was Blockbuster or Redbox at the time, but we had rented it, and it's it's a non-memorable movie for sure. Like, I barely remember half of it. I remember Amber Heard. I remember like it was pretty corny in some scenes. Like, it was super. It's super non-memorable, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm in the same camp as you, Chase. I've actually seen that, and I have not seen Big Trouble in Little China, which is kind of like Will's about to leave right now.
I'm just completely lost faith in humanity right now. That's all. No, you know what? I think I got a couple extra copies lying around. Maybe I'll see if I can whip something up for you guys and get them out to you, because it's actually. I don't know if you guys are interested in it, but I don't know if Shout is still having the sale. It was recently on sale on Scream Factory for like $15 for the Blu-ray, which isn't bad.
And they're discontinuing it.
They are. Yeah, it's going out of print. Yeah.
He's about to buy it.
And the interesting thing,
on
the physical.
I'm like, shit. Let me just get it then.
But the interesting thing about it is there's a lot of speculation as to what's going to happen regarding a 4K release, because it's 20th Century Fox. They're the rights holders to Big Trouble in Little China, along with, you know, movies like The Omen and The Fly and some others. And seeing as the Blu-rays are soon to be or nearing out of print status, people are curious as to whether or not, they're going to get 4K releases, if Disney's going to be willing to, let someone take the reins and release them on 4K. So, but yeah, Big Trouble, it's one of those movies that's kind of stuck in that limbo right now with 20th Century Studios and Disney. So, but again, if you guys are fans of Carpenter's other work, I mean, I will say in terms of everything that's going on in this movie, it's definitely his most ambitious film. I think it's most separate from the rest of his body of work in terms of horror, because this is nowhere near a horror movie. This is like a straight action adventure, science fiction, martial arts. There's comedic elements in it as well. Like I said, with Kurt Russell's character Jack Burton, he's kind of playing this John Wayne-esque, like satirical version of a typical like American hero, So it's just an interesting dynamic, but it's a stacked cast as well. Like Kim Cattrall's in this movie, Dennis Dunn, who had a few roles in the '80s, but I mean he's probably most known for this movie. But James Hong is David Lopan, one of the most notorious villains of the time, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, the soundtrack slaps as well. So I would highly recommend you guys check this out. We gotta get you guys to watch this.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll buy. Yeah, it's not on sale anymore, but if it's gonna go out of print, I'll probably just buy it.
Yeah, I would keep an eye out for it. I mean, you can probably find it on Amazon too. I don't think it's only available on Shout Factory. I would check some other retailers.
I think
too,
Amazon.
just in
It's
case,
26 on Amazon too.
Oh damn, it's even more on
Yeah.
Amazon. Is that how much it is on Shout right now?
22.
Shout, 22 on Shout. Yeah, it's actually cheaper
Damn.
on.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like 15 like a week ago because I saw I was watching a video and someone was talking about out of print titles and it was on there. I was like, oh, let me go online and see what's going on Shout Factory, and I saw it listed for 15. It's weird that they changed the price.
Yeah, I'll probably get it. Maybe the next 2 weeks we can schedule like a retrospect kind of episode on it, because it is a movie that's kind of just like flown under the radar for me, and I've seen tons of people talk about it, especially like the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, Kurt Russell's fucking awesome. I love anything that Kurt Russell's in, so I'll check it out. Maybe we could plan like before the month is out, do kind of a retrospect on Big Trouble Little China.
It'd be cool. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
All right, Chase, we're heading back to you. We're spinning around to you. So what's your second pick for your cult film?
I actually changed it 4 times while we were talking. It wasn't what we originally ran through. So I changed it. I don't know, just Swords and Sandals have been on my mind lately, or Swords and Fantasy. So here is a movie by Peter Yates. It came out in 1983. It had a budget of about $30 million. It says 27 to 30, and it pulled in 17 million. I want to say Liam Neeson's in this movie too. I want to say he is, but it's Krull, Krull. Yeah, have you seen it? You've seen it, Will. You had to have.
Krull, you're talking about. Yeah.
Krull. Yeah. It's so good. It's actually got a very.
Shit, I forgot all about that movie.
Dude, I've actually seen this movie.
Dude, have you really?
Yes, but I mean, this is like back in the day, bro. I saw this like freaking when I was like 11 or 12 years old. I looked at the poster just now. And I'm like, what the fuck?
The volcanic eyes. I forgot what the plot is of that, but the volcano with eyes essentially in a mouth, like vampire's teeth and stuff. Yeah, it looks really cool. And he's got like a cool little glaive in his hand, like 3 blades on it. And he just throws it around. And, it's kind of your typical the princess needs to be saved, the land's been sieged, kind of swords and sorcery type of approach. But it's also got a little bit of a futuristic vibe to it at the same time. It's got like that, like a little bit of sci-fi elements in that category. And I just remember I was just browsing through, trying to find something. I think it was actually put out by the studio, the Blu-ray that I have. I was browsing deals and it was on Amazon for like $6 many years ago. So I just pulled the trigger. I was like, that poster looks crazy cool. Buy. It was there the next day. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just really, really good. To give like the quick film synopsis, because I only remember like the last half of it, because it is a pretty slow build at the very beginning. It's essentially, so it's about how like there's their son will rule their like the. How do you freaking describe this damn movie, man?
Dude,
How do I explain?
I
this
just
to everybody?
remember like teleporting to some like alien like freaking I
Yeah.
don't know what it was, like a castle or fortress or
It's
something.
it's some kind of castle that like I don't know if it's on the I don't even know
Oh,
if it's
man.
on Earth or
This
not.
is
Whatever
nostalgia.
whatever planet they're on, because I remember I don't know if it's the guy's bride or like she's a queen or whatever.
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
like
She's
king and queen
trapped in the
dynamic.
castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the castle, that's like the antagonists that are in the castle, who I'm assuming
Yeah.
are like the alien invaders or whoever the bad guys are, and they have to go or break into the castle to rescue her and escape. That's all that I remember. I just
Doesn't he
remember
get like
that the
some
castle is,
crystals
like,
or something to like or
Yeah.
glass, or there's like a glass to see through or something where you could like teleport and see through thing. I don't remember.
Yeah, 'cause
it's like so long ago, dude.
That was like one of my favorite things was whenever they get into that castle, the set design of that was super, super awesome. That was super cool, crazy set design. But yeah, it's it did absolutely horribly, but box office wise, but it's just really, really, really cool. Yeah, I absolutely adore movies like these, like movies like that are such high risk, high reward type of situations, and it didn't pay out. It's almost akin to like Big Trouble in Little China. I don't know if this thing had any. It's not like Liam Neeson is today. You know what I mean? Liam Neeson. This was one of his first roles, as far as I remember. This movie came out in '83, so it's an older movie. But like that kind of set design, the intricacies put into everything, the screenplay was pretty solid. Everything about it, man. Even the main character and their acting was really, 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 really good.
Is this
But yeah,
Chase? I don't know. I'm going to pick your brain a little bit because I remember like I think the effects in this movie are actually not like they're actually halfway decent. Like I don't know if this
Yeah.
is the movie. I don't know if there's a spider in this movie. I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember, but I think there's a scene with like a spider.
yeah,
Like they have to go in and they fight. I remember it being kind of like creepy actually. Like
yeah. When he gets
I'm
like
gonna try to
tangled
look
up.
it up.
Oh, dude, yeah, I just looked up the spider. I remember the
just
like a
spider.
motion
It's like a white translucent kind of looking spider.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I remember. Dude,
the design was great in this movie, man.
I gotta watch this again. I remember I would see it like I think it was like on TV sometimes, and I would watch it. Like it was just like replayed a lot on TV. I don't know why, but that's where I remember seeing it as a kid.
Yeah, like that spider actually looks like
It looks pretty
Really
dope.
good.
yeah.
Like
That's cool.
how like in some older movies, whenever you'd have CGI like light beams, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like Star Wars style. Like Star Wars obviously looks good, but like it sticks out like a sore thumb. When it happens in this movie, it actually looks really good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the CGI, whenever you can tell, it looks really good, very fluid. Yeah, I mean, check it out. It's a little bit of a longer one. It's over 2 hours, but definitely worth a check out. Anybody that's let me go ahead and look it up, see where it's streaming at. I know you can
See,
probably
this
pick
is
up the
what's so
Blu-ray.
funny though, because like the three of us have seen this, and this is a movie
Dude.
that I would not expect all of us to have.
It's just like yeah, I watched this passively as a kid. I don't know why or how, but I remember as soon as Chase started talking about it, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, wait, hold on one second. I started Googling it. I'm like, I've seen this.
Yeah, it's really good.
Nuts.
It's a very fun movie. But yeah, I'm glad we all saw that, but not Big Trouble in Little China.
Chase is
Shameful.
gonna look for
Absolutely
2 other
shameful.
podcast hosts.
Shameful.
Oh man, good choice.
What's
dude.
your second one, Gabe? I took you down memory lane with that one. I blasted you like
did
way
a
back.
nostalgia, bro. Well, this one's a nostalgia for me too. I don't know, and I didn't even ask you guys. I mean, so I chose Friday as my
Oh,
cult
yeah.
movie. I mean, I'm assuming you guys have seen Friday, right? Yeah. So
Never
I
heard
mean,
Yeah,
dude, Friday is just when and I know we're talking about doing an episode of just kind of hangout movies, and that would definitely fall in the realm of a hangout movie. But I just love this movie so much just because it's so casual. This is like literally what I mean, like obviously no one's gonna have a drive-by happen in the middle of the day, but like it's such a casual kind of hangout movie where you're like, this is what your friends could be doing on any given day. And then like the whole freaking thing with what was the bully's name? Debo, I think is his name, right? The bigger dude.
Debo,
Yeah, Debo. The stuff with Debo and freaking Chris Tucker, dude. It's just a freaking hilarious movie. And I think this was Ice Cube's first role, right? I don't think he had taken another role prior to this.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have to check on that. I think that was his first role. I got to double check. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, guys, I mean, feel free to. Oh no, he was in Boys in the Hood.
He wrote the movie.
Boys in the Hood was that was before.
That was
this.
91. Yeah, so he did Boys in the
Yeah.
Hood. I'm looking through his. He did. What is this movie? I never heard of it. CB4. I got to double check that. But, yeah, Friday, dude. I didn't know who said he wrote it. Was that you, Chase, or?
Yeah.
I did not know that he wrote this. He was co-writer on this movie. Yeah, he co-wrote the movie. I did not know that. But I mean, yeah, dude, it's just a freaking hilarious movie, and just the way everything pans out at the end, and just all the silly characters. And I mean, they're all exaggerated. Debo, I mean, his dad, Chris Tucker's character, like they're all just so much fun. And it's like a movie I could literally play in the background. And I know, like, I almost know most of the words of the movie, but like anytime I could just pop in and just watch a little bit of it, I know what part it is, I know what they're doing, and it's such a fun movie that I feel like it's a lot of movies have taken from that kind of formula since then. You know what I mean? I know we mentioned like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We mentioned, I think we were we talking about Dude, Where's My Car last time? I don't remember if we were talking about that movie.
We may have brought it up. I think we brought it up when we were talking about hangout movies, but I don't know if that was after the roll or not. I don't remember. But
I don't remember. But I just feel like there's so many movies that kind of took that formula from Friday, and kind of expanded on it over time. But I mean, it's the original. It's the classic for me, dude. And I remember watching this movie growing up with my cousins. We'd watch it all the time. It's such a freaking hilarious movie. And it's definitely garnered, I think, just new life as it kind of came out on DVD and Blu-ray over time. And I'm still waiting. I know there's been rumors about them doing a fourth and final one. But I know Chris Tucker's kind of the holdout for that. But I love the sequels too, man. I love Next Friday, or I think it's called Friday After Next is the third one.
Friday After Next, yeah.
Freaking hilarious,
Last
dude.
Coming out, the fourth one.
That's the one that they're waiting for, right? So it's just a fun movie, dude. It's hard to talk about it almost like in a deep way, because to me there's no deep themes about this movie. There's nothing like like to analyze about it. It's just a fun, casual movie to watch and kick back with. So Friday is my pick, man. Great freaking movie.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Friday. That's definitely one. I mean, we'll talk about that one too more so when we do our Hangout Movies episode, whenever that is. But I want to mention one thing. That guy that plays Debo, I think his name is like Tommy Liston or Tommy Lister Jr. Or I think his name was actually Tiny. Like that was his nickname. I've seen that dude in so many movies. He was he was in that movie Armed and Dangerous. He played like the security guard.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown. He was one of the characters in that movie. So yeah, shout out to I think his name was Thomas Lister or Tommy Lister.
Yeah, Lister. He's I think he's typecast in a lot.
He was, but
movies,
dude, he's such a personality. Like, one of those guys that was like instantly recognizable. Like growing up, and I'd see him, every so often I'd see him pop up in something. I think he did some stuff with like, I want to say the WWE or like the WWF back in the day, like back in the '90s.
Yeah, he did.
He
actually did. I remember that. And he was in Fifth Element too, wasn't he?
I think you're. Yeah,
let me see. Hold on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he was in Fifth Element too. I'm trying to pull up his.
Yep, he was in Fifth Element.
Pull up his IMDb.
Yeah, he was a cool dude, man. But he was typecast in a lot of stuff. But I mean, it was always kind of a pleasure seeing him whenever he was in a movie, just because, like you said, he was kind of like this fun, kind of spontaneous personality.
Yeah, but Friday's a classic, dude. I mean, it's got like. It's just kind of like there's like comedy in it. There's obviously like it's weird, right? Because it's pretty much like an open-minded, almost like an acceptance of like the drug use and the guns and violence as like part of the characters' lives. But it looks at it from such a unique perspective, which I think is interesting. So, and you have films like Menace to Society, which were, I think, released within a few years of this movie. I don't know if it was before or after this, but it's just interesting to have like those different perspectives, because you have like a movie like Menace to Society, which is, incredibly violent and much more of a cynical, more serious look at characters involved in that kind of world. And then Friday's much more of a lighthearted, more straightforward, I guess we could say. It kind of takes more of a comedic, like relaxed approach to that. So I appreciate it a lot for that matter.
Yeah. Solid movie, and they need to freaking. It's not on 4K, is it? I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
That's one I would buy like day one if they did a 4K for it.
Yeah, I still get the Blu-ray from I don't even remember who put out. I forget when I
ancient,
bought the Blu-ray,
bro.
but
Hey, I'm curious.
I
Have you
might
guys
do like a Blu-ray video of like all my, because I have so many Blu-rays that I just haven't seen in so many years because I've just been so busy buying like 4Ks now. It's like I forget that like I still have a lot of movies on Blu-ray.
A lot of great titles that just haven't had transfers yet. What were you saying, Chase?
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna ask. Have you guys seen "Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood"?
I think you had brought that up last pod. I don't know if it was like while we were rolling or after. Like you had brought that up. Didn't you have like? I've never seen it.
Well,
you told us the story. I think of like your coworkers had you see it, right?
It was that and Friday. Yeah, my coworkers on my birthday sat me down and made me watch it in the back since I hadn't seen it. My whole shift, I just watched movies. Yeah. But that one's hilarious. It's hilarious. Yeah, because it's just it's like an amalgamation, like a blend and parody of all like the hood trope movies that were coming out, like Don't Be a Menace to Society and stuff.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, just to sell you on this movie, it's a Wayans movie. It's got Marlon Wayans in it.
Oh, then
there's a part where like there's like this truck and there's these people in the back, and then they have this car like right here, and there's these people standing right here, and so they keep pulling out weapons at each other. And they keep increasingly getting bigger until the person in the car just pulls out a bazooka. And it's just goofy. But he's also wearing like pacifiers in his twists and stuff like that and in his locks. And it's just goofy, man. It's a hilarious movie. But yeah, definitely shout out that. It's really funny.
That reminded me of, I don't know why, this is totally random, but you guys remember Malibu's Most Wanted?
Hell yeah. With that one guy from
God, dude,
Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah, man. When you're talking about the weapons getting bigger, I don't know why I just started thinking of that movie. That movie's freaking hilarious.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my second pick. Friday. Will, what do you got for your number two?
I'm gonna go with Clue from 1985. This is one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite mystery movies. I think it's a fantastic black comedy. I'm not familiar with the director of this. It's a guy named Jonathan Lynn. And I'm trying to remember what else I've seen from him. I don't think I've seen much of his filmography at all. But
it just got a 4K, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout Select actually put out a 4K this, which is fantastic. They actually did a pretty solid job on the transfer. So I would highly recommend, if anybody hasn't seen it yet, to check that out. And they put it out with a slipcover. You get the standard Amaray with the slipcover. On the 4K release there, so would recommend checking that out. But yeah, I mean, if you guys, I don't know if you guys have played the board game Clue. It's a game that my family used to play. We used to play it all the time. It was like, if it wasn't like Monopoly or Scrabble, we would have Clue. Like that was one of the first games I remember playing with my siblings and my parents as a kid, like growing up. And it was just so much fun. And then, when we figured out there was a movie, like when I discovered there was a movie, it was like one of my favorite movies as a kid growing up. And I'm pretty sure, so this movie was, I think it was mid 80s when it came out, 1985 or 1986, distributed by Paramount. It was like a $15 million budget. It did not make a lot of money. It was considered a failure. I think it only ended up grossing like 13 or 14 million. So it was just short of the production budget. But yeah, there's so many. At the time, anyway, I was a big fan of this guy called Lee Ving, and I had seen Lee Ving. He was one of those like punk rock guys. He had a band called Fear, and it was interesting because I had seen him in a few different films, like just randomly, and he played Mr. Body in Clue. But you had Tim Curry in there, who was Wadsworth the butler, who was just a fantastic performance. You had Madeline Kahn in there as well, Colleen Camp. I think the guy's name was Michael McKean. I'm trying to remember the guy that played. I think he was Mr. Green.
Yeah, he was Mr. Green.
But if anybody doesn't know the plot, I mean, if you don't know by now, you get like, I think there's 6 or 7 of them. They're invited to this mansion or this house for this dinner. Mr. Body is the host, or so they think, and he ends up winding up dead. Somebody kills him. So spend the rest of the movie trying to figure out who killed Mr. Body. But it's such a funny movie, dude. I love it. I think it's the fact that they played off of the board game and were able to make a movie like this. It's one of those movies that at the time, I just think, again, it was just misunderstood because it was ahead of its time. And it's got multiple endings, too, which is pretty cool. Like, how often do you have a film that's released, I mean, looking back at the 80s, with multiple endings? And I think there's like 3 or 4 different endings, which is cool. So it's amazing that they shot all those endings and have those available to see. So that's really cool. I'm just a fan of that. I just think it was... I don't know, just something unique, just something different. So that's my pick for, or I should say second pick, which is Clue. I would highly recommend checking that out. Just a super fun movie. So
I remember the VHS. We had the VHS of Clue growing up, and I'd seen. I gotta watch it again, dude. I just remember vaguely. Yeah, I remember the whole premise, like where you described at the end of it, where there's like multiple endings. It doesn't even say like this is ending A, this is ending B. Like it kind of notates which end. I gotta watch it again. But yeah, I had the VHS of it. I don't know what the hell happened to it, but we had it growing up.
Yeah, and I think I remember from like, I don't know if it was like the VHS or the DVD, but I think there's 3 endings. And I think the way it goes is it shows the first ending and then it shows the second and third endings subsequently on the DVD or whatever format, which is cool. I'm probably thinking of the VHS because I'm almost positive, because I had the Blu-ray version of this from years back, and I'm pretty sure on the Blu-ray you can choose. I don't know if you can choose it or you can. I think there was a setting that you could actually randomize the endings, which is super cool.
That's cool.
So
that's
every
cool.
time you watch it, you can just pop it in and it'll give you a different ending. So, yeah, again, I mean, some people could look at that and say it's gimmicky, but I don't know. I like it, dude. I just think it's unique, and I'm a fan of Tim Curry, big fan of Lee Ving. The few acting performances that he's had, I just think he's like an interesting character, right? But I'm also going off of my knowledge of him as kind of this punk rock personality as well, being in the band Fear and having a history with that. And Fear is like notorious. I think they got like kicked off of SNL for like trashing the set of SNL. So there was this whole like personality behind Lee Ving that I was curious about. So it's just one of those movies that I think I just go back to every now and then. So I'm super excited to have the 4K. I'm glad that Shout decided to put that out. So yeah, definitely worth checking out Clue if you guys haven't seen that one yet. I know, Gabe, you said you saw Chase. Have you seen it?
It's
I
just
don't
been
even remember it, dude.
Yeah, it's just been a while. But whenever you said Jonathan Lynn, it actually made me start looking, because I mean, I need to go get the 4K. But I wanted to piggyback, since you were talking about Jonathan Lynn, and shout out My Cousin Vinny. He did that movie. That's a fantastic movie.
I love My Cousin Vinny, bro.
Yeah, just shout out that. Take people down a nostalgia trip. But yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. Like I'm pretty sure I had the VHS and stuff like that. It's been that long. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. But I definitely want to pick up the 4K. I heard really good things about it. I heard it was really well done. But yeah, it's just been a while. Probably one of those ones I just need to rewatch.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about these
mystery
cult movies. Yeah, dude, it's like you guys are bringing me down nostalgia. Like Clue. I mean, I remember watching Clue, but it's like I don't remember it like vividly. But it's so awesome that that these films get a second, third chance, whether it's Blu-ray, DVD, now in 4K. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that you like other generations can hopefully watch them, because it's like. This movie, like you said, well, I think I could see how it's like maybe ahead of its time, where it's like, you release this and it has multiple endings and people are like, what the hell's going on? This is, especially what was the year this came out? Was it like 1980 something, right?
Or 86, I think.
And I think in the 80s for sure. I think there was like, I know like the 70s was a lot more kind of experimental. 60s and 70s was a lot more experimental in terms of the way they shot things. And I think in the 80s, like we just kind of fell into like almost like a convention with like action movies and tropes and just like the way things were playing out. So when you have a movie like Clue, where it's like, we're going to give you guys multiple endings, I'm sure that probably kind of threw people off a little bit, just after watching so many movies in the 80s that were kind of very standardized in terms of their structure. So I got to check that one out again, dude. I remember watching it as a kid, but it's been years. That's a
Yeah.
good pick.
And it's weird too, because like I said, it's a mystery, but it's also kind of like a black comedy in a lot of regards. So I can see that again, like going back to like Big Trouble in Little China. I just think a lot of movies, particularly from the '80s, like what you said, Gabe, I think that was a perfect way to say it. The '80s became, in many cases, just a very conventional decade for storytelling in terms of filming techniques, and so you have movies like this that are kind of going against the grain and doing something different. They kind of fell out of place, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's the case with a lot of these movies. But I mean, Clue for me, and these are my kind of closing thoughts, but it was kind of my gateway, I guess, from a young age into like mystery movies, right? Playing the board game and then watching the movie, like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, the mystery films are actually kind of cool. So that kind of got me interested in more so like caper films and stuff like 10 Little Indians and stuff like that. So Clue was kind of like my gateway to that stuff. So it kind of holds a special place in my heart for that reason. So
yeah, solid pick, dude.
Great one.
All right,
I think it's back to me again, right?
Yep,
It
I think
is.
it's back to you, Chase.
So I actually have 5 options to talk. Every time we go down there,
he just keeps coming up with
Yeah,
more
he's
movies.
changing
Yeah.
him. Yeah,
I have to
can't
throw you
stick
guys
with
for
this list,
curveballs.
man.
I can't be predictable. But
See,
no,
this is why
so,
there's a part 3 because we just
Because
keep
I
finding more movies.
It's just gonna run to my other monitor over here, full of tabs for movies to talk about. So I'm struggling between. Okay, so I'm
He's
gonna go
actually
with
got a
this one.
second podcast after this, guys. After he's done with us,
Yeah,
he goes on to his there's a whole
A
other
secret podcast
he
that
does.
we don't know about.
It's just a private one. I like to listen to myself talk. So I just once you guys get off, I just private it and put it on there and listen to it myself. So I'm going to shout out this one, Soylent Green. I'm not going to talk much about it, but Soylent Green, shout out that one. Great movie.
Soylent Green.
That's
is
a good
people.
one. Soylent Green is people.
That one's really good. But what I decided to go with is I think this definitely fits in the cult category, especially for what this director has ended up doing. It did okay at the box office. It didn't do Clue. It didn't do Krull. You know what I mean? It had a budget of 777,777. Sevens all across the board. It made 2.4 million. So still not a lot, right? This is actually George Lucas's very first movie. He turned it from a student film to a feature-length film, but that is going to be THX 1138. Gabe, you've seen it, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, you like it?
It's not bad. Like honestly, it's definitely not like the George Lucas I knew. I actually saw it after I saw the Star Wars movies because I'm like, what else has this guy done? And that's when I saw American Graffiti, and then I saw that, and I was like, this is out there. But it's cool because it does show kind of George Lucas. He doesn't fall because the Star Wars movies are kind of conventional in a way. We just talked about convention, but I mean, at the same time, they're not either because they're so different and so new and so fresh. But this is definitely, you can see that he's just a film fanatic and he really does like kind of experimenting and trying different things.
Yeah, it falls in the category. For anybody that hasn't, I'll just read like on the wiki, the first plot line of it really describes it without going into spoilers. But in a dystopian future, sexual intercourse, reproduction are all prohibited, and mind-altering drugs are mandatory to enforce compliance among the citizens and to ensure their ability to conduct dangerous and demanding tasks. Emotions and the concept of family are taboo. And to go further into that, like they can't have relationships. They all shave their head. They have these tags to identify themselves because everybody's meant to look the same. Right. And the reason why I wanted to shout this out is because while in and of itself, it's a good movie, it's not great, but that is a movie that I think if anybody just took the premise of it and ran with it, we could have an all-time classic. You know what I mean? And that's not to take away from THX 1138. It was George Lucas's very first movie. I just think that like if he had even just a little bit, or even if he pulled an Alfred Hitchcock, I believe it was The Man Who Knew Too Much. Where he went back and remade his own movie after he had more money and more fame. George Lucas had went and did that. I think that would have been awesome. There's a very good idea here. Same thing with like Soylent Green. Soylent Green's very slow up until the last 25 minutes. I think if it was a movie as classic as that is, But if somebody went back and remade it and expanded on what's given there, I think that you have something like those are, to me, that's when a remake is warranted, right? When you have a cult movie like those two and you have such a good idea, but it wasn't expanded on. And if you have the right minds, like Suspiria 2016 is a great example, right? It's not necessarily a remake, it's an homage that expands on the universe, right? That's appropriate. But I absolutely adore the movie. It's not like one of my favorite movies of all time. I just absolutely love the premise of that movie more than the execution, you know?
Yeah.
It's a very, very solid movie. Don't get me wrong. The acting is very solid. But it's really just the premise. It's like The Purge. The Purge has such a great premise about it, but this one's better than The Purge. Don't get me wrong. The Purge never fulfills its own prophecy, if you know what I mean. This one definitely does. But
This one reminds me of that one movie, Will, that you had brought up. I think it was the one with Christian Bale when we were talking about the early 2000s.
The Gunkata?
Yeah, which one was that?
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
Yeah.
Isn't this kind of like a similar premise too, where it's like there's kind of an authoritarian government or police force, and it's like you cannot feel, you cannot have emotions.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say the inspirations for both of the films are very, I guess we can, and even for George Lucas, because I mean, we got to think about this too. I think THX 1138 is an interesting film to look at as far as what George Lucas has done, because, you know, he would obviously go on to do Star Wars, which are much more like, you know, family friendly, not family friendly necessarily, but more digestible to a general audience, more of those like giant, like space adventure opera movies. Whereas this one's much more reserved. It's much more, I guess we could say, intimate, but it's a lot darker in terms of the subject matter as well. I would say it's like much more inspired by something like George Orwell or something like that. So, yeah, and I guess in terms of that, Equilibrium kind of, I guess they're cut from the same cloth as far as that's concerned in terms of that, more of a like Orwellian, like authoritarian type of society, you know, where you know, everybody's got a number or a name tag or something like that. So, yeah, I'd say they're similar in a lot of regards in that aspect.
That'd be cool if he did, like you said, Chase, if he went to kind of revisit this and I hate to say like redid it, but like kind of, you know, obviously I'm sure like the resources he had at the time were limited and he just couldn't, you know, maybe really fulfill what he wanted to do at the time. But I kind of, when you were using that analogy, I keep thinking of Coppola, because he's doing something right now, isn't he? Kind of, he's using his own funds for like a personal project of his, like it's like Mega something. I forget what it's called.
Megalopolis.
Dude, I can't. It's a tongue twister for me. Megalopolis. I can't freaking say it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that'd be cool. I would love to see George Lucas do something like that. Now that, I mean, obviously he's loaded after Star Wars, so it's like if he did do something kind of more in the, you know, film kind of exploration stage, which I think he still kind of would be willing to do, but I just don't know if he's willing to put himself out there anymore after Star Wars, that is.
No, I mean, it would. I don't know. I don't think George Lucas is ever going to do anything other than sit on his throne of money. You know what I mean? Skywalker Ranch. He doesn't need to do anything.
He doesn't
Every time
need
he
to do
lifts a finger,
anything.
he made them, like, I will arguably say he made the most successful franchise of all time. You know what I mean? There's no competition, merchandising funds, everything like that. Like just the way that it keeps rocking and rolling. Like you could just make Luke Skywalker's lightsaber and you're gonna make millions of dollars off that toy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing that even comes close to that, you know.
But he's also very knowledgeable, though. I mean, when you hear him talk, I saw an interview with him. I don't know if it was him, Christopher Nolan, and Quentin Tarantino. I don't remember, but like it was George Lucas talking to kind of some modern directors, and he loves film. You can kind of tell this guy is very passionate about like film, and you know, he's like going in depth on Kurosawa and freaking Stanley Kubrick and just a whole bunch of like 1950s, 1940s films that I had never heard of. So you can tell he's very passionate about film, but like what you said, Chase, it's like, I'm wondering why it doesn't translate into him making another movie, but maybe it's because, you know, the motivation isn't there anymore. Who knows? I know Star Wars took a lot out of him. I think he, you know, whether it was the reception, the fan base, whatever, a mixture of variables, but I think it just took a lot out of him. I mean, I don't know if that kind of robbed him of his passion of making movies.
Yeah, and that's like really, really well said. And I mean, because I mean, he didn't direct any of the Indiana Jones. He was just like a major producer on that one, right?
Yeah.
But didn't he do Red Tails? It doesn't say it on Wikipedia, but didn't he do that Red Tails movie?
I don't know if he like executive produced it. Let me see. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, the one from 2012. Because I was just looking at the filmography. It's just Star Wars, American Graffiti, and Howard the Duck.
It says
was
John Ridley
Anthony
wrote the
Hemingway.
screenplay. Additional material was shot the following year with executive producer George Lucas as director. So, was he considering coming back? I don't know. I mean, it was a Lucas film. It was produced by Lucasfilm.
Maybe that's why. Because I remember him advertising the living hell out of that movie, man. I just remember
Yeah.
like whenever they were coming on, it's like like what we were talking about on our Conan review pretty recently. Those like little behind the scene 90-minute featurettes like that would go on like E and everything like that because the Conan set came with those. I remember those for that. And George Lucas, I'd be like, oh, a new George Lucas movie, you know. But yeah, he did pretty good on 1138. But I mean, if you're sitting on that fat of a cash and per on directed features, all you made was 1138, American Graffiti, Howard the Duck, and Star Wars one, all of those, like that's just wild, just
Yeah,
crazy.
it's nuts.
Yeah.
Kudos to him though, because even though it is a conventional kind of, I guess like Star Wars falls under convention. At the same time, it's not though, because it's like so quirky and weird. Like I always try and picture myself like in that decade when Star Wars came out. You know what I mean? And they're on Tatooine in that bar with all these weird creatures, and you're just like, what the hell am I watching? Like, what is this? It's a really weird experience. Now it's so normal to us just because I think it's been embedded in pop culture and everything. But when it came out, it was very different.
It took a lot of inspirations from Dune once I finally got a hold of that series and read the book. Like with the weirding way and everything like that, like the shouts and everything, but instead of it being your voice and just stuff like that. Apparently Frank Herbert, the writer of Dune, he had an issue with that back in the time. That's a whole podcast episode for another time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you didn't know about that? Like he tried,
No.
as far as I'm aware, he tried to sue them and like had issues and was very vocal about that. Like that A New Hope was essentially Dune. You know what I mean?
Crap.
And I don't disagree because to a degree it was.
I'm almost done with finishing the book, like Dune. I think I have like 100 pages left. I need to.
It's really good, man.
Finish it. It's a good book. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can kind of see the similarities. I think the only difference is really tone. There's a different tone in between the the content
in that world.
Yeah, for sure.
Dune's a very very dialogue heavy. With some action in there. Even the Denise movie had a little bit of more action, drawn out action.
Than what's in the book. Yeah, 100%.
But we'll save that for our future Dune episode that might or might not be dropping in the future.
Dune.
It's gonna drop. I already got my tickets. I'm ready to roll.
Yeah.
So this is so number 3, right? We're on number 3.
You got it.
I think last one was Blade Runner, guys. This is just a movie that I know. Well, didn't you say, Jay? I remember in our earlier episodes, you had said either you rewatched it again and you liked it, or you still it didn't resonate with you whatsoever.
No, he still doesn't like it.
No, it's the overrated movie. Remember
man?
Underrated and overrated movies, and I chose that for my overrated.
Yes, that was the episode I was talking about. My bad.
Yeah.
I thought you had said you'd watched it again recently, dude. Like, how do you hear like freaking Roy's monologue and think like it's like not one of the greatest written?
It's good, but it doesn't redeem the rest of the slow pacedness of the movie for me. The set design's really good and everything, but yeah.
It's so I didn't know a lot of the history about, like, I've always loved the Blade Runner, but I've interestingly enough never like gone into the history of like its development and its release. And I think Will had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that it just wasn't, I think it didn't do well box office wise, and it was like critically kind of polarized when it came out, which is kind of mind boggling to me, man. Just because I obviously saw this movie way later, but it's such a freaking masterpiece in my opinion, man. Just everything from when the concept of like replicants to the philosophy of like what does it mean to be human. It's just a freaking gorgeous movie, man. And it's mind-boggling to me, like, I guess from a retrospect perspective, that this came out and people were like, I don't get it, or I don't understand what Ridley Scott was trying to do. I mean, this is, to me, still probably Ridley Scott's best movie, like probably tied with Alien if I had to kind of pit those against each other. It's just I really appreciate Blade Runner's kind of introspect in terms of kind of the human condition and what it means to be human. I think that makes it trump Alien, but this movie's just everything. It's a masterpiece in my opinion. It's hard to kind of even critique this movie just because I love it so much. And it hurts my heart that Chase Chase can't. Yeah, man, it's crazy. I thought this would be like right up your alley.
I did too.
It's
I mean,
mind-boggling.
I'll marinate on it for a few years, watch it, and then watch me change my mind, and then I'll laugh at myself.
But I mean, yeah, it's just square. I mean, maybe, and that's a generational thing. I know with a lot of these movies, we're talking about how, in that kind of like what we just said with Clue, Will, where it's like, in the 80s that comes out and people don't understand it. I think Blade Runner is probably the same thing. This came out and people, what was the release date for Blade Runner? Let me see. 1982.
1982, but and again, huge year because I think it was in line with The Thing and E.T. and I think Conan was released that year. Conan the Barbarian was released that same year.
Yeah. And it was another kind of, I mean, using that example of the, the 80s being a much more conventional like era. I definitely think this kind of broke convention for sure, because it's just kind of, you have the quote unquote antagonist of the movie almost like turning, I hate saying turning good at the end, but kind of, him delivering that monologue and helping him out. And it's not that kind of like good guy, bad guy, good guy wins kind of deal. And I think maybe that's kind of where it really didn't resonate with audiences. But I mean, I freaking love this movie, dude. Masterpiece.
I understand what Chase is saying with the slower pacing, because I can understand maybe that's why audiences didn't take a liking to it, because I mean this is not a straight up science fiction action film. It's much more of a science fiction. I mean, it's, I guess we could say, I mean, it's a film noir, but it's more like future noir,
Yeah.
It is much more slower paced. I mean, it's much more character focused. It's much more story focused than it is in terms of action. But I mean, there's still incredible set pieces. I mean, the special effects and the costume design, set design are all absolutely incredible. We talked about this, I think, when we did our overrated underrated picks. It's some of the same talking points that we're kind of going back to, but it's weird with the release, Gabe, because I don't know who produced this, I forget, but I remember reading that they released this in June, which I'm pretty sure was the same. It was whoever put out Alien. I mean, whoever.
Well, Alien. Hold on one second.
Because I remember reading that the production company wanted to release it in the same week or the same month that Alien and Star Wars, were
Alien
released.
Was 79.
Yeah, but they released it in June because it was something to do with, like, they had success during that time of the year, like during the summer season with Star Wars and Alien, respectively. And so,
gotcha.
They decided to throw out Blade Runner around the same time, but unfortunately, it had a lot of competition. I think there was like a Star Trek movie out as well. I mentioned Conan the Barbarian. I mentioned E.T. The Thing was also in the running that time. I think that The Thing was June as well. I think we talked about that on the last episode. So yeah, I mean, obviously that affected the commercial success, but yeah, I just think again, it's another movie that was in some cases just misunderstood by audiences as well. I think it got mixed reviews from critics, from what I remember. It wasn't like totally panned, but
it wasn't panned, but it got really polarizing reviews from what I'm reading here. And interestingly enough, I mean, we can even compare it to 2049, where I mean that really wasn't a box office success either. I think people were, I think they were hyped to kind of get a Blade Runner sequel, and they started kind of getting into Blade Runner and maybe a lot of people seeing it for the first time. But I think even when 2049 came out, it was kind of like, I mean, I think Denise, like, it just kind of kept with the same tone of the first one, and people maybe walked out of that too, kind of like, what is this movie? I don't understand it. Because I think 2049 was, I mean, it's hard to, I mean, I'm gonna always say Blade Runner trumps 2049, but I mean, I could see where people think that 2049 is better. I mean, it's a beautiful movie, and in a way, that one's kind of become a cult film in a weird way too. I think it's definitely gotten life, when it came out on Blu-ray and 4K, and people kind of, reflected back on it and said, this is like a really freaking amazing movie that just underperformed and just wasn't appreciated at the time when it came out.
It's definitely interesting to look at too in terms of the time frame, because again, I don't want to mention The Thing again, but was released pretty much the same year, same month, I think, from what I remember. If we look at the boom in home video, and you look at a lot of the movies that were released around this time period in the early 80s, a lot of those movies found success with the boom of home video. So it's weird because you can almost look at all these movies that were released around the same time that weren't performing well theatrically.
Yeah.
They all found success in the coming years, or I should say in the subsequent years on home video. So, yeah, and Blade Runner, I'm assuming, was one of those films. I'm pretty sure it sold relatively well on home video. So,
well, it had all the different cuts too. I mean, you got I forget how many freaking endings there are. I know that Ridley's Ridley's very adamant on the final cut being the final cut, but I mean, I actually like all the different endings, man. I mean, I've seen them all, and they're all just unique in their own way. I do like the final cut a lot. I think that the final cut kind of just adds that kind of ambiguity to it. But I mean, all the cuts are pretty phenomenal. Isn't there one cut that's not released though? I don't remember.
I don't know for sure. So it's interesting because I remember it was one of the physical media releases. I don't know if it was Blu-ray. It was years back. It was like this big briefcase type collection. And I think it had several cuts on there, but I don't know if it included every one. And that's what I'm remembering. And I remember at the time it being advertised as, this is the definitive collection. You're going to get all the cuts of the film. And it was crazy that it was like this giant briefcase edition it was like the silver like briefcase with like the unicorn on it.
Yeah, I think I remember that too.
Or the Pegasus, whatever it is on there. So,
don't you have like an ultra premium back there on your shelf for Blade Runner?
Me?
No, I don't actually. Unfortunately,
I thought you had that.
No, I wish,
An
bro.
ultra premium.
Ultra premium.
Yeah, like
there's not just premiums. There's ultra premiums.
Ultra premium.
No, that's actually the movie that got me into premiums. I actually saw I think I saw the Manta release online, and I was like, this box that looks fucking amazing. I'm like, how do I do this? And then people were like, you got to freaking go in a group buy and all this crap. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but I mean, that
like,
box set is freaking incredible, dude. And yeah, I see this this briefcase set that you're talking about, Will. It goes on eBay for like 120 to 170 bucks.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know if it includes all the different cuts. I have to research it, but if it does, I wouldn't mind actually getting it. It's a cool little collection. But yeah, I mean, right now we have I think it's the final cut that's on 4K, and that's Ridley's kind of definitive version from what he said. So, yeah.
Blade
Let me ask you
Runner.
this. I was curious because you said Alien and Blade Runner are your two favorite Ridley Scott movies.
Yeah, I mean, I love Gladiator too.
I was gonna say I thought Gladiator was your favorite.
Gladiator is definitely like it's up there, but I think like Blade Runner is just kind of Gladiator is like more to me. It's kind of, even though it's a tragic kind of story, it's like more feel good. You know what I mean? It's like, at the end he kills the dude, and it's like, it's a bittersweet ending, but it's very kind of straightforward. I think I like Blade Runner more just because the complexity of kind of the self-analysis of kind of like what it means to be human. And then Alien is just a classic fucking horror movie. The effects in that movie are just mind-blowing. The practical effects. So it's between like Alien and Blade Runner usually, but Gladiator is an amazing film too.
I think in terms of the influence on the cinematic landscape and just pop culture in general, Blade Runner, Blade Runner was studied, in campuses across the country, for the questions that it posed regarding, humanity, like the human experience, like what it means to be human. I mean, that it's just crazy how it kind of kickstarted all these, just all these discussions about that kind of stuff, So I guess we can say it's renowned for that reason more so than Alien. I mean, Alien's a great movie, but I just think Blade Runner's. I don't know. Blade Runner just had so much more of an impact on not only pop culture but the science fiction films moving forward. I mean, it's impossible to not notice its influence, in the coming decades after that. So,
yeah. But that is Blade Runner, guys. That was my final pick. Will, I think you got one more, right?
Yeah, and so my last pick is actually interesting. I mean, I was actually going to use Blade Runner to segue into it because it definitely draws influence from Blade Runner. But in terms of, we just talked about movies finding new life on home video. There's an interesting story with the following movie, and it's a movie that was released more recently on 4K. In fact, last year we got a 4K steelbook of it. And actually, was it last year or was it 2022? Chase, I'm gonna have you back me up on this, but the movie I picked is Event Horizon, which is 1997.
That's February 2022.
Film. It was 2022.
2 years ago.
You know what? They're actually re-releasing that steelbook, I think, this year.
Yeah,
there's a reprint of it, wasn't there?
Yeah,
this
it's
month
a
or
reprint.
next month. Yeah,
I think it's coming up soon. It's in the next couple months. I picked Event Horizon though because it's interesting. So there's a few things I want to say about this movie off the bat. It's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, and if you guys are not familiar with him, he's the reason Resident Evil exists as a film. He's the reason
Alien
Mortal
vs.
Kombat
Predator.
exists. Yeah, all those amazing, peak cinematic experiences in the Resident Evil film universe exist because of Paul W.S. Anderson. So he's been gracing us with his presence ever since Mortal Kombat in the mid-90s. But I will say, I'm not a fan of a lot of what he's done, to be completely honest, but I think Event Horizon is the best film that he's ever made.
really.
I think it's his best movie. I think it's his best movie. I mean, that might not be saying much, depending on how you view his other films, but I just think this is a movie that, I think it probably has, in terms of like 90s horror films. I mean, again, it's a science fiction horror film. It's just as much of a sci-fi movie as it is a horror film. But I think it has some of the creepiest imagery that I think I've seen in a science fiction movie. And the release of this movie, it didn't do well financially. I think it had a $60 million budget and only ended up making like $40 million or something like that. So it was considered a failure. I did not know this, but I was doing a little bit of research while you guys were talking, and apparently the production was actually rushed. What's that? Yeah, it was rushed
hellish.
by the. Yeah, it was just very troubled. They had a lot of issues. It was rushed by the studio. I guess the original cut of the film was very heavily edited due to the studio's demand. It was a commercial and critical failure. It says here $42 million, so I was pretty close. I said 40, I think. So $60 million budget. But it ended up doing so well on home video, the DVD release. The sales were so well. They did so well that Paramount actually reached out to him to start working on a restoration of all the footage that wasn't used to come out with a second cut of the movie. But I love this movie, dude. I think it's one of those movies that doesn't fall into like the typical science fiction, cliche that was established by earlier films like Alien and then the subsequent films that followed. I think Event Horizon is just unique. It kind of does its own thing. It's much more of I guess we could say it's more of a psychological film as well as it is like a straight up kind of like blood and gore film. But I just think the imagery, we talked about Blade Runner and the imagery in that movie. I think Event Horizon does that really well. I just think it's so unique in its presentation, and you can see its influence today in games like Dead Space, for example.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have ever played Dead Space. When I played Dead Space, it made me think of this movie. Like, Dead Space is, I guess, an incarnation of Event Horizon in a video game format. So, just a great movie, dude. Just one of my favorites of that time period. And the fact that it was released on 4K, got a 4K steelbook, as Chase said, 2022.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It looks fantastic. Some of the effects are somewhat dated, but overall, I think it's a solid movie, dude. And frankly, I think it's been reevaluated today. I think people have much more of an appreciation for it today than they did. And even today, I still think it's one of those movies that's not talked about enough. So that's my pick. I don't know if you guys, you've seen it, Chase. I don't know
have
if
not
you've
seen it.
Gabe.
Nope,
I
I've
think you
been
should
wanting
check
to
it
see
out.
it just because I do like kind of space horror kind of stuff, and I think when that steelbook came out, everyone was getting it, and everyone was just high praise for the movie. So yeah, I do want to watch it. I'm curious, but like you said, at the same time, it's Paul W.S. Anderson, and He's one of those guys that anytime I see his name, I'm kind of hesitant. But I mean, it seems this is this is kind of the jewel in his filmography, so to speak. So
yeah,
I definitely want to give it a shot. It looks interesting, and the fact that it's space horror alone, I'll probably watch it. Is it on Tubi? Is the question. If it's on Tubi,
yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
Let's find out real quick.
I'll watch it.
Roll the dice. While you're looking that up, I've actually got a much different opinion on this because that director's cut never came out because Anderson does not want to release it because he actually said that having to cut it and everything like that, he was actually fine with the way that it came out and he thinks that it was for the better of it with the subliminal imagery and stuff like that, with the way that like some of the more disgusting and disturbing elements, like during a lot of the quick cut scenes and stuff like that, whenever that would happen, a lot of that was the cut footage just put through to get past the MPAA and how the studios wanted it chopped.
Yeah,
I want the full 2 hour and 10-minute cut. I don't want that hour and 36-minute cut because knowing what it like, I like space horror. You think this would be a movie that's meant for me with everything in there. You said it perfectly. It's pretty much Dead Space, right? So it's a match made in heaven, but man, I wasn't the biggest fan. It's good. It's like a 6 out of 10, a serviceable 3 out of 5. But I wanted to love the movie more for what I heard. Right? I heard it was terrifying. I heard it was this, but no, it's a space opera. You know what I mean? A space horror opera. It's essentially his take on Alien to a degree, right? With a lot more sci-fi into it. But yeah, I mean, very solid pick, very solid movie nonetheless. But I wanted to like that movie a lot more than I did. I wanted it to be like a masterpiece in my eyes because it had the potential to be. It had a very original story.
And see, I agree with part of that, but I think where we differ is like when I look at it, look at it and say I think it avoids a lot of the typical, I guess we could say, the space monster stereotypes or tropes that we're used to seeing. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it actually does a good job of kind of separating itself from that, which I think is why I appreciate it a little bit more than some of the other, I guess we could say contemporary films, right, of that genre. So that's kind of where I stand on it. But
no, that's valid. I can understand that for sure. And just the whole aspect of it. Yeah, it's just a very wholly original screenplay. It really is. It's very, very solid, very, very good, very well made. I just, man, we need to do an episode on MPAA massacring our movies.
Destroying
That's a whole
films.
Yeah, like I just let it go out. You know what I mean? Just
it's over the dumbest stuff too, man. I mean, like I know I'd mentioned this before, but when I saw that documentary on Taxi Driver and how just Martin Scorsese changing the color grading on the blood got him the R rating he needed. Like that's all he needed to do. It's just so freaking ridiculous, man.
Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
No, I agree.
And Gabe, you might appreciate this. This is the last thing I'll say about Event Horizon. So there's a scene. Chase, have you seen Interstellar yet?
Yeah. I sold Gabe.
Thank God.
I had 3 copies of the Steelbook.
Yeah, you sold me one of the Steelbooks. Yeah.
Yeah, Best Buy sent me 3 copies of that, by the way, when I ordered one when that came out. So Gabe found out I had one. He was like,
please.
Hey. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys remember. I'm sure, Gabe, I'm sure you will. But the scene in Interstellar where they're kind of illustrating how the wormholes work, how they function.
Yeah,
that whole scene is kind of taken from Event Horizon. There's a similar scene in Event Horizon where they kind of use, he explains how wormholes work to some of the other crew members. So I thought that was kind of neat that Nolan threw that in there. It's kind of like a little homage, so to speak. So.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I got to check it out. I mean,
sounds
it's interesting for sure. I definitely want to check it out. And the hype it was getting when that Steelbook was released. I mean, it seems like a lot of people enjoy it. So, was it on Tubi, Will?
I was going to say, but is it on Tubi?
Yeah, but is it?
No,
no,
it's on MGM.
It might be a little while then.
Paying for
I watch it.
Yeah, no, it's on MGM Plus.
Gonna be a
whatever
minute,
that is. It's MGM streaming. Isn't MGM owned by Amazon now?
Yeah, why not just dump it on Prime?
Amazon. Yeah, I don't understand.
Put it on Prime. What's the point of an MGM Plus subscription?
I don't. Dude, I didn't even know that existed. Yeah, I don't understand.
Is it just a Prime add-on?
I don't know because isn't Prime
Dude.
charging for they have like an ad tier, a free ad tier now or something?
Ad-free tier. You have to pay for no ads. Man, the
this
future
is
we're
just
getting
on
in.
Google, but I mean,
It's
this is how
dystopian now.
ridiculous it is with
Reset.
streaming right now. Okay,
Yeah,
MGM Plus, you can get it with a subscription. It's also on Paramount Plus. It's also on Amazon Prime Video. It's on a YouTube Primetime subscription. It's on I mean,
You said it's on Paramount Plus though, or
it's on Paramount Plus.
I'll just
supposedly. Let me
steal my
click on
brother's
that.
password for Paramount Plus. Then.
Yeah, no, it's on Paramount Plus.
Okay,
They have it on Paramount
I'll watch
Plus.
it there.
So,
yeah. I mean, we should probably
Yeah.
do another episode on that too, man, because I feel like some of this streaming shit is getting it's getting
Out of hand.
bonkers lately. Like honestly, I think a lot of the times I'm just like very tempted just to buy the movie. Like it's like Event Horizon. I mean, with the hype it was getting, I would maybe just blind buy it. Or even right now, well, that movie, I really want to see it, dude. Past Lives, the one that you had mentioned in your top
Yeah.
5 video. I saw the Blu-ray for like $17, and then I was gonna rent it online, and it was like $6.99 or something, or so. It was some ridiculous price to rent it. I'm like, I might as well just buy
Yeah.
the damn Blu-ray at that point.
Yeah, Gabe, I would actually pay attention to that Blu-ray because that's been on sale for like $9.99.
Dude,
like
I was
twice
so
now.
pissed. I thought it was like I was literally buying it. Like I was in the process of buying it, and the price changed. Like literally as I was buying, I was so pissed off, and I've been
That's
so
such a
tempted.
slap in the face.
It's at Zia Records like for like $17 or $16 or something, and I was like, I might just buy it just because I've heard phenomenal things about it, and I really want to see it.
Yeah, I think
but yeah,
I mean, you'll like it for sure.
It's just a weird. It's weird when rentals are just so high. I mean, not all of them are like that. I mean, some of them you can still catch for like $3 here and there, but it's like when you're going to charge me like $6 or $7 to rent a movie, or those stupid, like when they're still in theaters but they're in digital and it's $20 to
rent. That's so
screw
lame,
that, dude. It's like I'd rather just wait for the 4K when it's out.
People that do that just have more money than sense.
I know some people who do it, dude. It's mind-boggling to me. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I'd rather just blind buy it at that point.
Yeah.
Even if it sucks, like I'm still making out where at least I have a copy. There's a chance where I'll enjoy the movie and I can have the copy on my shelf.
The only time I did that was when Spiral was day and date streaming, or like you could do the video on demand and in theaters. And because I'm such a big Saw fan, I couldn't wait. I've never paid $20 to rent something day and date again since
we saw that day one in theaters.
Yeah, I just didn't want to go to the theaters.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we could do an episode on that too, because I feel like some of that streaming stuff is getting bonkers now. Because Netflix is raising their prices again too. I just heard that like 2
more
weeks
at this
ago.
point.
Dude, just buy your movies and
buy
TV
'em.
shows. It's just so much easier at this point.
Yep.
All right.
Everybody said we were crazy,
Yep.
All my friends look at me like, dude, I don't get why you still buy movies. And now those same people are like, oh, hey, do you have this? Do you happen to have this title? I was hoping to.
That's all my family does, bro. They all ask me. It's like, did you buy this movie? Did you buy this movie so we could watch it? Because everything else is so expensive. Yeah. So, all right. Did you guys have any honorable mentions for the cult films before we tune out?
Did we want to talk about Evil Dead? I know that was one that we were discussing in the
I had it on my list too, but I didn't know if we're going to do a part 3. I feel like that deserves kind of more time to talk about it, at least for me. It is kind of more. I think Evil Dead, like when you think of like like Rocky Horror Picture Show and like Evil Dead are like my ideas of like when you think of a cult movie.
For sure.
So I probably want to talk about that one later, but we did have Evil Dead. I had Memento as like an honorable mention. It just felt kind of weird because I guess it is a cult film, but it's not to me. I don't know. I'm kind of in that weird.
It's because you think about it every day.
The forefront of my mind all the time. Have you seen Memento, Chase?
Of course,
that
not.
stack on his television, bro, must be freaking huge, man.
Yeah, you know what? I don't have support beams in my house. I just have.
He actually, he uses the stacks as physical. I was gonna say that's actually what the TV is sitting on. It's just a stack of fucking 4K Blu-ray.
That's why when he does his reviews, it's just like on the bookshelf there. He doesn't want to like pan out. He shows like the rest of it.
Yeah. He doesn't want anybody to see the situation over there. It's getting pretty intense. It's getting dire.
Yeah. Oh man,
that's good.
But yeah, I mean, I had Memento as an honorable mention. I mean, I don't know, maybe next time. I just don't know. I'm like 50-50 with that movie. I know it's gotten kind of like a cult fan base as time went on, but also, I mean, it's a pretty popular movie. I feel like it was pretty well received when it came out. It wasn't, doing crazy numbers, but I don't know. Maybe next time we can talk about it.
Yeah, the only one I'll really throw out, because the rest of the ones I have up here on my tabs are ones I could go into detail about. This one, most people know it. 12 Monkeys, Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt. I think I haven't seen everything Brad Pitt's been in, but that's one of the best performances in a movie by an actor I've ever seen, by Brad Pitt. He's just AWOL. He's just crazy, you know? But yeah, that's a great movie. Love it. Disappointing transfer by Arrow. One of their few and far betweens.
Yeah. Yeah, that had some issues, didn't it? I ended up.
Yep.
Did they do a replacement program for that?
They
thought
did,
they
but
were
it was
doing
so
that.
short. The window was so short. But yeah, 12 Monkeys is great. And I heard the TV show was good too.
Oh, I didn't know.
I never
that
watched
TV
it.
show. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I never watched it. On Sci-Fi.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Terry Gilliam.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really, really solid.
Cool. Well, I think, and Will, did you have any honorable mentions you want to?
No, I think that's it. I mean, this is a pretty solid episode. I think we definitely do a part 3 down the line. Once you two schmucks decide to watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, we'll come back and do part 3.
Yeah, and
So-
Big Trouble Little China.
And yeah,
Yeah,
No,
Will's
Fear
going to be
and
like,
Loathing, I think-
we can't do part 3 unless you watch those 2 movies.
yeah, that'll be in the that'll be a prerequisite for that.
That sounds good to me, man.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys as always for tuning in. And just like last time, feel free to drop some comments below and let us know any other cult movies that maybe we missed out on or we can talk about for part 3.
Yeah.
Until then, guys, we appreciate you and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much, everybody.
I don't know what to
Alright,
say to
yeah.
that.
I don't know what to say.
We'll leave it on that.
We'll leave it at that. That's all, folks.
See you.